Hey there, everyone, and welcome inside the Bayhackle Sports Studio for the latest episode of Game On. I'm Jeff. That's Jack. How are you, man?
Doing all right.
Doing ready. Here we go. Every Monday, we bring you the latest scores, highlights, and standings from the local high school sports scene in the Queen City.
So let's get things started as we take a look back at some of the action from the gridiron this past Friday night.
And we're going to start Mallard Creek, who made the trip to Harding, and this one was all the Creek. Time winding down in the first half. Mallard Creek looking to add to their big lead. Running back Khalil Ali gets the direct snap, followed his blockers in, and found the end zone. This one was 45-0 at the half. Opening kickoff of the second half. Here we go. Jack, I got to shoot one now. Samaritan Page gets the kickoff, starts to his left, runs out of the running room. So what does he do? Heads back to the right, finds some blockers, turns on the Jets, takes it to the house. Mallard Creek runs away with this one 53-0 and improves to 4-3 on the season, 3-1 in the Queen City 3A 4A conference.
Yeah, sometimes not all that's gold glitters.
I know, yeah.
Homecoming for the Providence Panthers, much like their professional counterparts in Uptown, have not had the start of the season they would have wanted to. Winless in the conference, looking to turn things around, but they're up against the Big I powerhouse Patriots. Panthers were on the prowl early on defense, but would not hold back Independence for long. Justin Little back in the pocket. He sends one soaring across the middle of the field to one of his favorites, Vontrez Birch, with the 40-plus yard reception to open up scoring in this one. A few drives later, more of the same from Independence. Little drops back again in the pocket, looks at the far hash marks. Here's something you don't see every day unless you're Catholic and Jack Larson.
Exactly.
That's William Brown, the tight end, outrunning and pretty much outplaying both defenders there. He's got the wheels, the gloves, and the toes to get the touchdown there. Indy, relentless. Justin Little, dynamic. He doesn't like to look downfield, so he tries his hand out a foot race. He's got some blockers, and he's got some room on the sideline. Plus, it doesn't hurt that he's got a mean left hook right here as he stiff arms the defender to walk into the end zone. Providence would be unable to get anything going, and the Big I puts up a big win as they win this one 54-21. And then South Iredell at Mooresville. We take a look at these two teams. Mooresville cannot be stopped.
They're tough.
It's a big reason why they're running back.
So is this kid, yes.
Eric Heel. He breaks outside. He finds some room down the sidelines. He's going to get some moves out here to get into the red zone. Set up a field goal just a few plays later as he just powers forward.
The kid his feet move all the time. One of the toughest around.
Blue Devils quarterback keeper Brody Norman makes it 10-0 next drive. And he's going to be able to push his way in the tush push. You can see the Philly special.
Yeah, a lot, yep.
Mooresville just cannot be stopped. South Iredell trying to do everything they can, but Norman, he's going to heave it here to Dominic Marin down the seam with a defender on his back, but it does not matter. He's going to get the Blue Devils in scoring position, and who else is going to punch it in?
Exactly. Eric Heel.
You already know. Eric Heel breaking free, heading to the outside for a walk-in touchdown. Mooresville wins big, 45-0. Stays perfect over South Iredell.
That kid, he's a ball player.
Yeah.
Reminds me of Marshawn Lynch a little bit.
Yep.
Hey, so another great Friday night of football filled with all kinds of action. And to help us break it all down and look toward next week, we are joined by Reggie Walker, our Bayhackle Sports football analyst, who you can catch every Friday night on our Bayhackle Sports Game of the Week. Reggie, how are you, my friend?
Doing great, guys. It's just an honor and a pleasure to be on with JT Squared right now.
Thank you, my man. You know we appreciate you.
Now, Reggie, to start things off, let's talk about this past Friday night and our game of the week, West Charlotte at Huff. This was one that everyone had marked on their calendars the last few weeks.
Yeah, a really big game, and it had a big game feel to it, guys. I'm telling you right now, for anybody that wasn't out there, you could feel everything in the air leading up to kickoff of that game. There was a lot of tension, a lot of angst, a lot of energy, all of those things. It was homecoming as well, so it was pretty lit up atmosphere. And listen, this is a West Charlotte football team. I love their talent. I think they're one of the best defensive teams that we've probably seen in the last 3 or 4 years, really, when you look at what they put together on defense. Unfortunately, they're not built to come from behind, and when Huff was able to get a lead, it made it very, very difficult for West Charlotte to get back in that ball game. This is the first time that I've seen K.D. Smith, the quarterback at West Charlotte, really have some issues just coming up with ways to make plays. Normally, he's one of those guys that just figures it out and wills it. Unfortunately, that was not the case on Friday night. Huff did an excellent job managing themselves on offense and creating some big plays on defense. And that's how the game sort of came together. But I thought both teams acquitted themselves well. That will let me know that they are both championship caliber at either the 3A, West Charlotte, or the 4A level, Huff.
Yeah, Reggie, you talk about these two teams. Obviously, Deshaun Baker, he was interviewed after the game, and he pulled out the receipts. He showed that all the people from Charlotte Observer picked West Charlotte to win, and then West Charlotte looked like this might be the punch in the mouth that they need to go forward. What can we take away for these two teams going forward?
Well, you mentioned, right, what Deshaun Baker said. I thought what Sam Griner said was very, very important. And he said, sometimes you need situations like this. Sometimes you need a loss like this. Of course, I'm paraphrasing. Sometimes you need a little bit of a loss like this to kind of wake you up and help you see some things that maybe you don't see when you're winning football games. Look, it's hard to coach kids. And let me give credit to Sam Griner and his staff. I know they have not missed the mark on any opportunity to coach their kids on how to get better. But there are times where it's hard for kids to recognize that they need to get better at something because they got another win. And so sometimes the attention is a lot better from them in terms of little details, and from them meaning the players after a loss, and the coaches will drill those things down. But I think Sam Griner and his staff do an excellent job. His kids are prepared. They were prepared in this game. I think at the end of the day, they were just outmanned to an extent, but the reality was Huff just made more plays than they were able to make in terms of West Charlotte.
Absolutely. So, Reggie, this coming Friday night, we have another great game between Sun Valley and Weddington. It's another matchup with a lot at stake. Two teams sit at the top of the Southern Carolina 4A Conference. How's this one going to play out? Give us your thoughts on this matchup.
Yeah, I think this one is interesting. You look at a Weddington team that's been battle-tested not only in years past, but obviously this year as well. I think the key in this game, if you're Sun Valley, you better make sure TJ Davis, Thomas Davis Jr., and the Harris brothers, Aiden and Aaron Harris, you better make sure you get those guys accounted for when you have the ball. If those guys are not accounted for on the defensive side of the ball for Weddington, you're going to have a major problem. Those guys create and make plays all over the field. They're problem children in terms of disrupting everything that you want to do. I'm sure they're good kids at home, but in terms of on the football field as defensive players, they are problem children, and they will disrupt your offense and ruin any bit of a game plan. You better get those guys accounted for. I think that'll be key. And then the other piece of it, from a Sun Valley standpoint, I think they're going to have to steal a possession or two by creating a turnover. If those things happen in that game, then Sun Valley's got a chance. If they don't get those things done, then they're going to have a lot of problems at Weddington on Friday night.
Absolutely. All right, Reggie, final question for you. We're getting down to the final few weeks of the season. We start thinking about the postseason. Teams like Butler and Indy, they're on a roll. How do the coaches, keep their kids even keel, maybe not look toward the postseason? They still have to think one Friday night at a time, one game at a time. So how do they focus on the week ahead and not start thinking about the playoffs?
To be honest, guys, let me make a quick point about Justin Little real quick from Independence and the job that DJ McFadden Jr. has done in developing him. I love that kid's story. I love the way he's playing the quarterback position. I'm going to say it right now. I don't know exactly how many scholarship offers he has, if he has any. But if that kid was 6'2", he'd have 50 scholarship offers. He's got every single tool in the toolbox. But some people will look at him and say maybe he's a little bit too short. Now, that being said, I think he's quite the player. I think they're a really good football team. Right now, the key with these teams is to remind them, right? And I know people don't love to look at press clippings, but you got to remind them who's all in their leagues. If you look at some of these conferences, over the course of what we see here in the Charlotte area, anywhere basically, I'll just say, if you're along 77 or 74 or 85, really, right, going that way, you're in tough conferences. You're in tough leagues.
Absolutely.
And so you can't afford to give a game away because that will largely impact seeding. You look at some of, and it was a great piece done by the Observer crew. It wasn't Langston Wirtz that wrote it, but I love Langston, by the way. Love you, man. You and your staff do an excellent job over at the Observer.
They do.
They wrote a nice piece last week, leading into last week's games, about seeding and situations and where teams were. I think that's something to keep an eye on if you're coaches. And I think coaches can use that to remind their players they can't afford to lose football games. They have to stay focused, stay locked in, because you can go really, really quickly from an advantageous spot, meaning you're probably going to host a game or two or three games in the playoffs, to all of a sudden not having a chance to host based on some other people winning and losing some games. Now, that doesn't necessarily play for West Charlotte right now. Obviously, they just lost the game to Huff, but they're 3A. They're playing 4A schools in conference play. They just played a 4A in Huff. But I think West Charlotte is still pretty firm in being the 1 seed out of the West. But I think the main conversation is to remind players that if you give away games right now, it can largely affect your seeding. And if you give away too many in a row, as we're going down to the last 3 or 4 games for most teams, if you give away 3 or 4 in a row here, you're going to end up out of the playoffs on the outside looking in. And that'll be devastating to some of those kids.
And absolutely. And some of those games can change on one play.
Absolutely.
And everything goes crazy after that. Hey, Reggie, thanks for your time, my friend. Looking forward to hearing the call this coming Friday night, Sun Valley, Weddington. It should be a great game. Thanks for your time, partner. We appreciate you.
Anytime, guys. Looking forward to it. And again, I'm going to tell the people again one more time at home, 7 o'clock on BayHackleSports.com, Sun Valley at Weddington, myself, and the great play-by-play man, Darren Vaught, will bring you all the action.
Best team in the Queen City, my friend. Maybe in the nation. I'll give you that.
Appreciate that. We'll take it.
You guys rock. All right, Reggie. Thanks, partner. Okay, so hey, let's take a look at some of the conferences real quick. Southwestern 4A Conference, Jack, what do we see, man?
Well, it's pretty straightforward. Like you see, Butler, Independence, 1 and 2, just 1 game separating them. Obviously, both undefeated in the conference.
And they play the last game of the season against each other.
It's going to be a title match right there. Then you got Charlotte Catholic as well, 3 and 1, just tricking along. They had the upset from Independence to set them back.
Right.
Now they're trying to get things back on track. And then tied for 4th, you see Rocky River and East Mac both sitting at 1 and 2.
And what we don't see there is Providence and Garinger. And I got to give credit to Garinger. They are getting kind of crushed every game. But they come out every time and they fight. And just the coach there's done a great job. All right, on we go. Next conference for you, the Queen City 3A, 4A Conference. What you got, Jack?
So obviously this one got changed up a little bit. Huff on top. West Charlotte down to tied for 2nd, but really when you look at the point differential, because they have the tiebreaker of points against, they bump down to what would be 4 when these records switch. You see Mallard Creek, Chambers, West Charlotte all tied for 2nd at 3 and 1. This one's going to come down to the very end.
Those 4 right there, you're talking about some teams that no matter how it shakes out, going to be in the playoffs.
Absolutely.
And we'll see what they can do there. And I think there's one more for us.
There's one more. So then we've got the Southern Carolina 4A Conference. This one, obviously, it's a smaller conference, so they just started their play.
Right.
But it makes it very interesting to look at that top 2, both tied for 1.
Friday night.
There's your game of the week right there. So the number 1 spot will be satiated after this week, one way or the other. And then you got Cuthbertson and Porter Ridge. Cuthbertson pulling out a big win against Marvin Ridge, who sits right now at the bottom of the conference at 0 and 2.
And as we talked about, and you mentioned it too, we've seen these blowouts, and we talked a little bit about on the Blitz Friday night. The points make a difference, and that's why they run up. I mean, they're not running up the scores, but when it comes to seedings, the points.
Absolutely, because when you have it, those tiebreakers, especially for conference play, are points for and points against. So when you see teams like Butler, teams like Catholic that are running up the score, Butler's beating teams by 50, 60 points. They're trying to do so to make sure that they don't have anything to worry about when these final games come down, when they have to play Catholic, when they play Independence, things like that. So it makes it a lot different, especially when you look at conferences like the Queen City 3A, 4A.
Right, with all this at the top. Well, we'll see what happens. Hey, for all your football highlights and scores, make sure you head over to BayHackleSports.com every Friday night at 11 for the Blitz, as the Bayhackle Sports teams brings you up to date on all the gridiron action.
And coming up next, we will take a look at some of the boys soccer and girls volleyball matchups that took place last week. So stick around as Game On rolls on.
Game On BayHackleSports.com is brought to you by Blue Cross and Blue Shield of North Carolina.
Hey there, everyone. Welcome back inside the Bayhackle Sports Studio. I am Bayhackle Sports Director Jeff Taylor alongside Bayhackle Sports anchor Jack Taylor. Now that we've brought you up to date on everything that took place on the gridiron last week, it is now time to switch some gears.
That's right. Let's check in on some girls volleyball and some boys soccer action from last week. And we start with boys soccer as we enter the goal zone.
And we start with Myers Park and South Meck, both looking to stay near the top of the standings in the South Meck 4A Conference. This one would be a 0-0. Neither team finding the goal during regulation, nor the first overtime or the second. This one went in with all zeros on the board, all defense in this one. A great game by both goalies. Now take a look at the standings in the South Meck 4A Conference. Audrey Kell, Myers Park up top. South Meck right there also.
On we go. South Iredell taking on Cox Mill, and this one would go to Cox Mill 4-2. South Iredell would score first, take an early 1-0 lead. Cox Mill would answer to tie it up at 1. South Iredell then would take it at 2-1 lead, but after that it It was all Cox Mill all night long. The Chargers would score 3 goals to go up 4-2, and that is how this one would pan out. Cox Mill sits in the 3rd spot in the Greater 4A Metro Conference. South Iredell is last in the conference, looking for that first win in conference play.
All right, on we go. Mallard Creek and West Charlotte, and this one was all Mavericks. Mallard Creek would get 2 goals from sophomore Elliott Booth and 1 goal each from Matthew France, Brian Flores, Eben Dorick, and to win this one 6-0.
Meanwhile, Marvin Ridge, Sun Valley, 3-1. They're playing last Wednesday night. Marvin Ridge coming out on top to score 3-1. Scoring for Marvin Ridge were Colin McKee, Brady Lloyd, and Adida Saha with the win. And Marvin Ridge got their first victory in conference play. Sun Valley still looking for their first.
On we go. Huff taking on North Meck last Wednesday night. The Huskies, too tough to tame. They get the win 5-1 over North Meck Vikings. Huff got 2 goals from Antonio Suarez and 1 each from Cole Scovira, Cameron Steedman, and Lucas Patragani. The Huskies now sit at 7-1 in conference play, good enough for the top spot in the Queen City 3A 4A conference, while North Meck is 6-2 in the conference and in the 3rd spot right there. So good win for Huff.
Yeah, went 0-100 there. We had some no goals in the first game and then a bunch in each one after that.
Now from the goal zone, it is rally time as we check in on girls volleyball action from last week. We love rally time. We start with the ladies from Myers Park taking on Audrey Kell and the Lady Knights last Tuesday night. This was a battle for first place in the South Meck 4A conference. Both teams with just 1 loss in conference play. On this night, the Mustang ladies of Myers Park were on their game, and they would win this one in a sweep, 3-0. The first set would be close, Myers Park winning that one 25-21, but in the next 2, Myers Park would dominate to win the match. The Mustangs finish out their regular season this week with matches against Barry and South Meck, while AK plays Olympic and the Palisades.
Coming down to the wire there for that.
Absolutely.
Well, next up, we've got Sun Valley up against Myers Park in a non-conference matchup. We went from Myers Park Conference, Myers Park non-conference. This one was a great match between 2 great teams. It would go all 5 sets. You don't see that very often. Lady Mustangs and Myers Park winning set 1. Sun Valley, though, would come back to win the next 2 straight.
Tough.
So match point, match game for Myers Park. They would come back to win the 4th set, leading to a winner-take-all 5th set tied at 2 apiece in that final set. Sun Valley would win it because in volleyball, if they don't go 25 at the end, the last set only goes to 15.
Right.
So 15-13 to take the match. 3-2. The Lady Spartans of Sun Valley currently sit 3rd in the Southern Carolina 4A Conference and finish their season with 2 conference games this week against Marvin Ridge and Porter Ridge. So now let's take a look at the South Meck 4A volleyball standings. Myers Park in the top spot. You see Palisades and Audrey Kell right behind them, neck and neck. Then you have South Meck still in the mix, still able to get something if they can get some games this week, and then Barry and Olympic rounding it out.
Absolutely. On we go as the Lady Bulldogs of Butler travel to Rocky River. Butler on top of the Southwestern 4A Conference, and it showed on this night. The Lady Bulldogs in control the entire night and dominated this match to win it in a sweep, 3-0. Rocky River would only score, get this, 22 points the entire match. Butler finishes their regular season with 3 matches this week against South Meck, which they're playing tonight. Then Cuthbertson on Wednesday and Independence on Thursday. And let me tell you what, this conference, here we go. Butler, Charlotte Catholic right there at the top. Independence, East Meck, kind of hanging in there. Providence, Rocky River, and Garinger kind of struggling there. But you know what? They're out there competing. So interested to see how Butler and Charlotte Catholic pan out there.
Absolutely. We still have more volleyball. Take a look at Porter Ridge taking on Weddington. The Lady Warriors of Weddington would win the first 2 sets of this one, and we're looking to shut out the Lady Pirates. But Porter Ridge had other ideas and would win the 3rd set 25-21. But that would be all the momentum they'd be able to rally up. Weddington wins the final set 25-20 to take this match 3-1. Weddington sits in the 2nd spot of the Southern Carolina 4A Conference, and they play the last game of their regular season tomorrow at Cuthbertson. For Porter Ridge, they are winless in conference play this season and sit in the 5th spot. They play their season finale tomorrow night in a non-conference matchup against Parkwood. So no wins for them there in the conference, but they still have one more chance to get a win as they end out.
And we're still not done with volleyball. Marvin Ridge taking on Cuthbertson. The Lady Cavaliers looking to end this season with some momentum would not find it against Marvin Ridge. The Lady Mavericks would win this one in 3 straight sets, and they get the sweep. Cuthbertson sits in the 4th spot of the Southern Carolina 4A Conference. Their last game of the regular season is tomorrow night as they host Weddington. With an upset over Weddington, Cuthbertson could move into the 3rd spot in the conference. You can see it right here. Marvin Ridge, Weddington right there on the top spot. Sun Valley, Cuthbertson, Porter Ridge kind of finishing it up there. So we'll see what happens right there. We got more for you.
2 more matches from last week to show you. Hickory Ridge and Lake Norman. Lake Norman coming into this matchup sitting in the second spot of the Greater Metro 4A Conference. Hickory Ridge came in sitting at spot number 4. Like the standings, the Lady Wildcats of Lake Norman came out on top in this one as they swept Hickory Ridge just like they did in football.
Exactly.
3-0. The Lady Wildcats finish out their regular season tomorrow night with a conference game against South Iredell, while Hickory Ridge still has 3 games to go to end their regular season. So they got some life there still. They play Cox Mill tomorrow night and then Hopewell and finish out with West Cabarrus.
All right, everybody take a breath. We have one more for you. Final volleyball stop. Jesse Carson taking on J.M. Robinson. Jesse Carson looking to stay in the top half of the standings in the South Piedmont 3A Conference, while J.M. Robinson came into this matchup in the 7th spot. The Lady Cougars were on their game as they would get the sweep, winning 3-0. Carson ends their regular season this week with matches against Salisbury, Lake Norman Charter, and East Rowan, while J.M. Robertson takes on Lake Norman Charter, Northwest Cabarrus, and South Rowan. So a ton of volleyball action over the last couple weeks, and it's kind of hard to believe that season is coming to an end and everything's starting to wind down. Everybody getting ready for the postseason. Hey, stick around. We still have more for you on Game On. Coming up next, we will bring you up to date on what's happening this week on the tennis courts around our area. Schools getting ready for postseason play. Stay tuned. More Game On coming at you next.
Game On BayHackleSports.com is brought to you by Blue Cross and Blue Shield of North Carolina.
Hey there, everyone. Welcome back to Game On, where each Monday we bring you the best highlights from the week before and get you set for the week ahead.
Now we have talked football, soccer, and volleyball. Of course, volleyball in postseason. So let's talk now about girls tennis. And to do that, we want to focus on postseason play as well, which gets underway this week already.
Absolutely. It's crazy. The action gets started tomorrow as the Southwestern 4A Conference and the South MEC 4A Conference serve it up and get their postseason play underway. Both of those events take place on Tuesday and Wednesday. As for the private schools in our area, the NCISAA gets their postseason started next week. Now, one cool story out of the Southwestern 4A Conference is the Lady Eagles of East MEC. They've had a great season, but what makes it such a great story is the fact that almost half of this team never picked up a tennis racket until they started high school.
Oh, wow.
Some didn't even have equipment to play. That hadn't stopped them from coming out, learning the sport, and playing hard. It is a great story. We're going to tell that story a little bit more this week on WCCB. So it's a great thing for them, and that conference actually starts 2 o'clock tomorrow at Butler High School.
Oh, wow.
So it's so cool to see, you've got football. And you've got the volleyball and the soccer, but the tennis, we're going to, there's some cross country this week. So just kind of cool to see it all taking place. But it's hard to believe we're almost through with the fall.
It is, absolutely. I mean, when you walk outside, you realize it.
I know now.
A little bit colder.
It's my kind of weather.
These Friday nights, these conference matchups, these playoff matches are going to start getting cold, and it's going to have a factor.
Yep. Hey, stick around. We have one more segment of Game On coming up next. We'll tell you about all the action you can catch next week on BayHackleSports.com. We'll be right back.
BayHackleSports.com is brought to you by Blue Cross and Blue Shield of North Carolina.
Welcome back to Game On. As we wrap it up, just a quick reminder that this week you can catch some exciting high school sports action on BayHackleSports.com as we live stream a couple events for you.
Yeah, the first, of course, we talked about is tomorrow night as we head to Central Cabarrus for some volleyball action as they take on Piedmont. And then the Friday night Bayhackle Sports Game of the Week. Another solid one, just like we were talking about earlier. Sun Valley traveling to Weddington in a matchup of 2 of the best teams in our area. Sun Valley, one of the shockers throughout, they're still undefeated. And they're looking to see if they can take on and take down Weddington
Coach
as well.
Capone will have his team ready, though.
Oh, yeah. But you're not going to want to miss that kickoff set for 7 p.m. on BayHackleSports.com.
And make sure you, of course, stay with BayHackleSports.com on Friday night right after the game at 11 o'clock for the Blitz, as we bring you the best highlights and all the scores from Friday night's matchup and a recap of our game of the week. So that is a wrap for this week's Game On. Make sure you stick with Bayhackle Sports throughout the week for all your high school sports coverage. Have a great week, and we will see you Friday night on the Blitz.